Let's rank all 6 Evil Dead movies.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
I want to be a fighter, like you.
Oh, let it burn! Let it burn!
Did you miss me?
You have to shoot them in the head. They always come back.
The boat can leave now. Tell the crew.
Well, sometimes that is better.
Good luck.
Hey everybody, what's up? I'm Killjoy Jake, and today we're going to be ranking all 6 Evil Dead movies with the release of Evil Dead Burn last week. The Evil Dead is my absolute favorite horror franchise, and a lot of that is because of how consistent this series is, which is what makes today's video so difficult for me. Truthfully, you could rank these movies in whatever order you wanted to, and I'd probably be like, yeah, I agree. All of these movies have a different tone, feel, vibe, setup, or characters, but they all do something really effective that makes them worth your time. Something else I love about this series is that each movie is kind of its own thing. Like, I guess there's a story running through Sam Raimi's original trilogy, but also kind of not really. It's one of the perfect franchises where you don't necessarily have to start at the very beginning. You can start wherever you want. Do you want something that's a little more campy and fun in tone versus scary and dark and mean? Well, then start with Army of Darkness and then work your way through some of the more fucked up ones. Or do you want nail-biting dread that is going to leave you tested? Then you might want to start with like Evil Dead 2013 or the new one. The point being with all of this is that the Evil Dead franchise truly has something for everybody, and someone like me, I just have such a broad taste for horror. I love all kinds of things. Evil Dead is one of those rare franchises that can do it all successfully. That is why it will forever be my favorite series, and despite how I'm ranking these movies now, again, like I said, all of these movies are fantastic for what they are. Starting off with entry number 6 here is Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness has to be the most Sam Raimi movie of all time. It's bloody, it's silly, it's a period piece, and my god is Ash Williams in this the most ridiculous and over the top he has ever been.
You know your shoelace is untied.
Army of Darkness isn't even trying to be a horror flick at this point in the franchise, it is just going for straight up slapstick comedy, with a little dash of fantasy and adventure. The Deadites in this one are mostly traded out for armies of skeletons, and again, a lot of the action here feels more fun than it does actually like scary and tension fueled.
When thou misspoke the words, the army of the dead awoke.
The humor in this flick especially is the driving force that makes me want to watch it again. I just love Ash Williams being such a bonehead this entire flick.
Batu, Miranda.
Bruce once again gives us a great physical performance, I think only bested by Evil Dead 2, but we've heard that Bruce Campbell went through absolute hell to make this movie as good as it is. I also don't think I really loved Army of Darkness until I saw the alternate ending, which that is the canon ending to this film, at least for me. If you've only ever seen the ending that takes place at S-Mart, you are actually doing yourself a disservice. The original ending played as a callback to the sequence where he forgot the wise man's words. He accidentally takes too many drops, forgetting the wise man's words once again, and wakes up in a dystopian future where the Deadites have seemingly taken over London. It's a very similar ending to Evil Dead 2, which I personally think is way better than that crappy little sequence at S-Mart. God dang studio interference. It's funny because, and not to spoil the TV series, but after 3 seasons of that show, they ended it the same way and never did anything with that concept yet again. It makes me so sad that we never got that movie, like Deadite Apocalypse and Ash is just trying to fight to survive through that. That would have been so much fun. Army of Darkness is not really that scary at all. I think it's going to be the first Evil Dead movie I eventually show my unborn child. Even though it is the 3rd installment in Sam Raimi's Evil Dead trilogy, I think it is a really good entry point to the series that showcases pretty much everything there is to love about it. Doing all of that in a much more watered down sense though, of course, nothing about this movie is really going to jump out and scare you. It's much more of a fantasy, adventure, slapstick kind of movie, and I gotta be in the mood for it. I will admit that is why it is my bottom spot, but that doesn't mean it's a bad movie by any means. It's just not necessarily the Evil Dead movie that I'm reaching for first.
You found me beautiful once.
Honey, you got real ugly.
In 5th place is Evil Dead 2, probably one of the best horror comedies ever made.
Evil Dead 2.
This is far and away Bruce Campbell's best performance in any movie ever. The physical comedy and terror of this role is so beyond impressive. I love it every single time. He makes the one-man show that basically is the first half of this movie constantly entertaining. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you've probably heard me talk about how much I just do not like horror comedies. They rarely hit for me, but Evil Dead 2 is a very rare exception where they actually hit on both the horror and the comedy side of a horror comedy. I have seen countless horror comedies where they're just comedies wearing the skin of a horror movie. I don't know, man. I just think if you're trying to make a horror and a comedy at the same time, you gotta know how to balance those two things. The first half of Evil Dead 2, I think, perfectly encapsulates the psychological horror of being alone in this cabin with unthinkable, incomprehensible horrors. It's a lot of psychological fever dream stuff where Ash feels like he's losing his mind. On top of that, a lot of it is very silly at the same time. I mean, everything with Henrietta in this movie is just so goofy and over the top. The side characters may kind of be forgettable, but at the end of the day, they're just there to be meatbags. This movie is really all about Ash Williams at the end of the day.
Swallow this.
I know that some people would put Army of Darkness and Evil Dead 2 all the way at the top of their lists, and I totally respect it. These movies absolutely rock. I think I just prefer the more scarier Evil Dead movies, especially ones that have a little more of an underlying story, like some of the ones we're about to talk about. There's no denying how masterful both of these films are and how influential they were in the splatter category. Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson pretty much pioneered that. In fourth place is Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise goes a little higher than the previous two films because I truly think it has the best ensemble of the entire franchise. I mean, great characters all the way across the board here. Every time I come back to this movie, I just love Cassie and Beth's whole relationship, especially in the back half of this movie, more and more and more. Nell Fisher and Lily Sullivan are absolutely electric in this movie. I just cannot wait to see more of them in more horror movies.
You know how to lie to kids.
I cannot tell you how excited I was when I heard that Nell Fisher was going to be in Stranger Things Season 5. She is a very talented young actress. Same thing with Lily Sullivan in that Soulmate movie that drops in a couple of weeks too. Evil Dead Rise also has one of the best Deadites of all time with Alyssa Sutherland's Maggot Mommy.
You don't look so good, Mom.
Nothing a big old kiss from you won't fix.
Sutherland is able to elevate the material, knowing when to be subtle and knowing when to be in your face scary. That monologue she has when she's talking to her family, just throwing a bunch of eggs at a hot pan, talking about wanting to rip everybody, all of her family apart and place them inside of her, whatever the fuck it is. Oh my god, I mean, that's such a great sequence. In a scene that mimics the cellar sequence from the original film, Alyssa Sutherland's character is standing at the door talking to Cassie, trying to get her to open it.
Open up now.
Saying all that crazy shit like, hey, your dad's out here, we made up, and we love you, we just want you to open the door. This is, in my opinion, one of the most upsetting Deadite performances we have ever got. A few tiny little negatives I have about Evil Dead Rise is I think there are too many silly injections, especially after coming back to it so many times, where I felt like it could have leaned into the horror a little more. Evil Dead Rise, I think, is trying to be this cross between like Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead 2013, and it's very effective in doing so, but I do think it undercuts the horror a few times. One of those sillier moments that just doesn't really work for me is Alyssa Sutherland using her finger on the record to like echo everything it's saying, and she's like shaking with her mouth open. Between that scene and the scissors going up her nose, the way it's edited, the way it's shot, it's just a little too goofy for me with how terrifying the situation is. It kind of takes me out of it a little bit. And that's not to say I don't want reprieve in my Evil Dead movies, but those are two sequences that could have been terrifying that kind of aren't because you played them a little too silly. I have the same thoughts about Lee Cronin's The Mummy, but like times 10 if I'm being totally honest, which by the way is an honorary Evil Dead movie, so I had to bring it up. The honorable mention of this video is Lee Cronin's The Mummy. It's a cousin movie to this series. Let's call it that.
Don't worry, Grandma. It's fun to be dead.
Some of the VFX at the end does look a little wonky, but I really can't complain about that, dude. We got ourselves a big old Deadite meat monster that got pushed into a fucking wood chipper with a chainsaw. I have no notes. I'll retract the whole VFX thing because of how cool that is. Rule of cool, baby. I can't argue with that. Evil Dead Rise totally rips, though. In third place is the original Evil Dead.
You, not another piece.
Whenever I get to talking about Evil Dead, I always like to ask people what their first Evil Dead movie was. Most people say Evil Dead 2 or like Army of Darkness. My dad gave me the Birds and the Bees talk, you know, that talk, and then proceeded to show me this movie saying, oh, you'll understand it now. Because of that little backstory there, it's this Evil Dead film that I think scared me the fucking most when I was a kid. I love you, Dad, but what the fuck? Looking at the original Evil Dead through an unbiased lens, however, because I really do love this movie so much, the acting in this film is notably not so great. They're definitely not gunning for any Oscars here.
Well, it might not be that bad.
No.
Actually, it might be kind of nice.
Yeah.
But just like what we were talking about with Evil Dead Rise, I think that there's this rule of cool energy with the Evil Dead that just kind of transcends it from that kind of criticism. The acting isn't great, there are entire sequences of this film that are out of focus, it's very sloppy, it's very amateurish, and yet it still has the scariest atmosphere out of all 6 of these films combined. Sam Raimi was able to capture something that Tobe Hooper did in 1974 with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He made a film that feels like you shouldn't be watching it. Despite how supernatural the horror gets in this one, it feels real, it feels grounded, and it feels like something that really happened caught on a videotape that you found in a dusty old attic somewhere that you probably shouldn't have put in the VCR. It is actually the raw, gritty energy of this movie that in turn makes it so goddamn great. Are the first 20 minutes of this movie kinda hard to get through because the character work just isn't that great? I mean, yeah, but once you get through that, this is one of the scariest horror films ever made. I will never forget the first time I saw that pencil go into that ankle, dude. I mean, I reeled back in terror just thinking to myself, God, that has gotta hurt. I also think it's a great choice that they used stop motion for the entire Sam Raimi Evil Dead trilogy. It's a beautiful yet excruciating art form that we rarely see in film, so when it does happen, we gotta point it out. Between this, Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness, there is some crazy level of artistry with these films that I think do deserve some more praise. I love the way that stop motion looks, and it gives these first 3 films a certain kind of character, a certain kind of personality. They have another layer of movie magic that the other flicks just don't have. Another thing about the original Evil Dead that puts it up so high for me is that Linda and Cheryl are 2 of the scariest Deadites in the history of this franchise, and that will never change. Like I was saying earlier, very clear flaws with the original Evil Dead, and yet somehow it still manages to be a masterpiece.
Why are you torturing me like this? Why?
Taking home the silver medal from this franchise for me personally is the new flick Evil Dead Burn. When it comes to a film being scary, that is of course subjective. Some things are gonna scare us while other things will not. When it comes to Evil Dead Burn dipping into French extremist horror, that is the kind of shit that gets under my skin maybe more than anything. For me at least, Evil Dead Burn is the flick that scares me the most from this franchise. The vast majority of the characters here are not likable at all and are kind of pieces of shit. Evil Dead Burn is scary even before anyone starts to get possessed. I mean, this whole dinner sequence towards the beginning of the film is so hard to watch. I would absolutely hate to be in Alice's shoes here, to be obligated to go to your abusive husband's funeral and then have to hang out with his abusive family.
Where's the wedding ring?
I'm not sure.
Did you sell it?
No, of course not.
You get a good price.
My God, these characters fucking blow. I mean that in the best way possible though. I think everybody gets a moment to shine here. The grandma especially I feel like is a super important character. With how dark this story gets, it's nice to have these little bouts of humor in the film that kind of relieve the tension a little bit. Otherwise, this movie would be Rob Zombie's Halloween, where there's no break in the tension and eventually you just kind of get bored. It's a different kind of humor than what we've gotten in the franchise's past too, and it's a kind of humor that, at least for me, works a little better. Dark humor is maybe my favorite kind of humor, so to have that be your moments of reprieve here just makes this one extra silly to me in a way that doesn't clash with the horror. The best example of that is the funeral sequence. You know, a funeral for a character that we had already learned was an abusive piece of shit. The only people that show up for his funeral are his just immediate family, which I think tells you a lot about Will. But on top of that, there's the irony of the construction sounds outside overwhelming the people inside. It is dark humor, but it is also serendipitous. I love it. I don't know. It's just such a great sequence of this movie. The dark humor sweetness of this film is cut with the absolutely bitter, mean spirit of all of the kills and the crazy shit that's going on with the Deadites this time around. I don't even know which kill is my favorite in this flick, but I will say the head smash has really stuck with me. 2026 is the year for head smashes, man, between this and Obsession. I also like that this movie is kind of bringing back the same energy of Evil Dead 2013, where characters don't just get attacked by Deadites and die. Like, characters are going through some shit in this movie for a long time before they actually go. I'm looking at you, Joseph. We used you for a lot of pain in this movie. God damn. Somehow I haven't mentioned Tandy Wright and Errol Shand, who give excellent performances, maybe my 2 favorite performances of this entire film. There's a sequence where Susan goes up to her mother's bedroom, realizing she's a Deadite, and basically just kind of gives in. It's not necessarily a terrifying moment, but it holds a lot of weight. We heard this character talk earlier on in the film about how she's nothing without her family. That's something that I feel her abusive husband has beaten into her. And now we're using Deadite possession as sort of a metaphor for that without getting too preachy, without getting too in your face face with it, it is still a very brutal movie, but now it's more than just deadites possessing people. There's another layer of theme to it. Susan basically relinquishes her autonomy to Edgar by getting possessed by the Kandarian demon during a kiss sequence that might be my favorite moment of the entire film, and probably one of my favorite moments of the entire Evil Dead series. It's honestly heartbreaking to see this character give in to the Kandarian demons like this. It adds this like emotional level to the film that just really sucked me in and elevated the material here. I mean, my god, Evil Dead Burn is way better than it ever needed to be. Some very minor gripes I have about this movie is that I just wish we did a little more with Alice. I feel like they did the bare minimum to win me over to this character's side, and it was effective, but just in comparison to some of the other heroes we've had in this series, Alice as a character is just a bit of a step down. That is not by any means due to Suela Jakob's performance here. She totally kills it. I just feel like she wasn't given enough to make this character truly super likable and a great heroine of the Evil Dead series. Evil Dead Burn also kind of has a similar problem to Evil Dead Rise, where the VFX at the end wasn't necessarily fantastic, but I would take this a little step farther where I feel like Evil Dead Burn's ending is almost unnecessary. I don't think we needed Will to come back from the dead to have a really triumphant moment here. I almost wish they had made Edgar the big bad of this movie, like how he kind of was up until that last part of the third act there. It would have kept true to the whole theme of like, we're passing down these awful traits to father to son. I can't lie though, it did make me pretty happy to see Alice jackhammer the fuck out of Will. He totally deserved it on top of everything that happened in the opening scene. Evil Dead Burn might be a little rough around the edges, but I think it definitely has some of the best character moments of the entire franchise. And in first place is my love, my baby, my perfect horror film, Evil Dead 2013. There are some phenomenal horror sequels out there, sometimes movies that best the original, but nothing from any other franchise has ever come close to the glory that is Evil Dead 2013. For me, this is everything I want in a horror film and nothing too much more. It's simple, focused, and effective. You have 5 characters trapped in a single location. They are all very thought out, well placed in terms of what they get to do in the film and where their deaths ultimately lie. The brutality of this flick makes me have to watch it through my goddamn fingers every single time, and you know the scenes I'm talking about. And the theme of drug addiction works so well with being possessed by a Kandarian demon. Jane Levy's performance as Mia here is one of my all-time favorite horror movie performances. She is not only my favorite deadite of the entire franchise, but one of my favorite heroes of the entire series. No one is ever gonna top Ashy Slashy though. But just like Ash Williams, Mia gets to do something in this flick that not too many other horror protagonists ever really get to do. Jane Levy gets to play the first victim, the main antagonist, and the final girl of this film, all in one movie. I can't name another movie where any one character fits all 3 of those roles.
You have to get me out of here.
This physically demanding performance alone sends this one to the top of my list. I love Jane Levy in this fucking movie, dude. On top of that though, the side characters in this flick also totally rock. Lou Taylor Pucci's Eric is constantly cited as one of the most frustrating horror characters of all time, and personally, I think that's a compliment to this character. That's very clearly what they were going for here. Eric is a super curious character, and that is laid out very subtly throughout the entire film leading up to him opening up all the barbed wire in the garbage bag and all the warnings saying, hey, don't fucking read from the Book of the Dead, you goddamn idiots, and then he still does it anyways. Another common criticism I have heard of Evil Dead 2013 that again, I just don't necessarily know if I agree with, is talking about Shiloh Fernandez's character David, whose relationship with his sister Mia sometimes comes off as very sexual to some people. I think a lot of this comes from the fact that he spends a lot more time with Mia in this movie versus his actual girlfriend in the film. For me at least, this is something that never really bugged me. I feel like this is just brother and sisterly love. Which you do have to admit is something that is very important for this story to work. I also have to give some credit to both Jessica Lucas and Elizabeth Blackmore, who have some insane moments in this flick where they are cutting off some part of their body. David Cronenberg wept at the body horror of this flick. Bringing this full circle here though, I think Evil Dead 2013 just does some things better than the original film, and that's why I just give it so much love as a reboot, remake, whatever the hell you want to call this thing. Sam Raimi has famously stated that he regrets putting the tree sequence into to the original Evil Dead. It's something that has been copied by many of the sequels. I also think that many of the sequels have done it better. Mia's character gets the tree up the, well, you know, and instead of just succumbing to the evil, she overcomes it by the end. I mean, she literally puts a chainsaw into the face of it at one point. She also does that after having to pull her fucking hand off that has been trapped underneath a vehicle. If that's not heroic, if that's not triumphant, I don't know what is. For me at least, Evil Dead 2013 is everything I want in a horror film and more. It's got an excellent soundtrack, it's got a whole bunch of blood, crazy body horror, great characters across the board, and a really excellent concept that makes me so happy every single time I watch this. Evil Dead 2013 is one of my all-time favorite modern franchise continuations, and I will never shut up about how much I love this flick. That's personally how I would rank all 6 of these films, but just like I said at the top of this video, ranking these movies any which way, I would probably give you the thumbs up. How would you guys rank the Evil Dead movies? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, please subscribe, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.